But Jinwoo wasn't reaching for the concealed weapon he always carried. He had stopped walking entirely, frozen mid-step in a room filled with Korea's elite, his eyes locked on something, someone, across the champagne-lit space. Taesung followed his boss's gaze, hand hovering near his own weapon, expecting danger. What he found instead made his breath catch. The most powerful man in Seoul's underworld, the man who had walked past 50 of Korea's most beautiful models without a second glance, was staring at a waitress in the corner. Not at her figure, not at her uniform, at her smile. She wasn't even looking at him anymore, had already turned away to serve an elderly couple with the same warm attention. But that smile, genuine, asking for nothing, expecting nothing, had stopped Jinwoo Park's entire world from spinning. 3 hours earlier, Jinwoo had stood before a full-length mirror in his penthouse, adjusting a tie that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The reflection staring back was carefully constructed. Sharp jawline, cold eyes, expensive suit tailored to hide the scars beneath. Minho, his second-in-command, reviewed the evening's objectives with military precision. Kim Sang-woo will be in the West Wing by 9, Minho said, scrolling through his tablet. He's ready to sign the contract for the Gangnam properties. The Choi family wants an introduction. Their daughter, apparently. He glanced up with a knowing smirk. Third daughter they've paraded this year. Jinwoo's expression didn't change. Tell them I'm busy. You always are. Minho pocketed his phone. Boss, the family elders are getting pressure. You're 34. They want. I know what they want. Jinwoo's voice carried the weight of finality. This is business tonight. Get Kim's signature. Avoid the press. Leave by midnight. That's all. Minho nodded, recognizing the tone that ended discussions. They'd worked together for 8 years, since Jinwoo had taken over the organization after his father's murder. In that time, Minho had never seen his boss show interest in anything beyond expansion, control, and survival. Women came and went, always kept at arm's length, never allowed close enough to matter. The Blue Diamond Hotel glittered like a beacon of old money and new power. Jinwoo arrived precisely at 8, flanked by Taesung and 2 other security personnel who melted into the crowd with practiced ease. The charity gala was the social event of the season, a playground where Seoul's legitimate businessmen rubbed shoulders with those whose empires existed in shadows. Mr. Park, a woman in a red gown, materialized at his elbow, her smile calculated to dazzle. I've been hoping to meet you. Excuse me, Jinwoo interrupted smoothly, moving past her without breaking stride. Taesung suppressed a smile. The rejections were part of the routine now. The ballroom was a parade of peacocks. Women in designer gowns positioned themselves strategically along Jinwoo's path, each smile more practiced than the last. A model whose face graced billboard across the city accidentally bumped into him, apologies dripping like honey. An actress laughed too loudly at a nearby table, making sure he noticed. The daughter of a rival businessman, attempting to broker peace through matrimony, appeared 3 separate times in his line of sight. Jinwoo navigated them all with the same polite disinterest, his responses automatic, his eyes empty. This was the performance, the mask he wore so well it had become his face. Smile slightly, but not too much. Acknowledge, but never encourage. Move before they can corner you. He'd perfected the art of being present while remaining completely untouchable. Mr. Kim is ready, Minho murmured, appearing at Jinwoo's side. They moved toward the West Wing, passing a champagne station where staff moved with choreographed efficiency. Jinwoo barely registered them. Servers were invisible in his world, part of the background machinery that kept events like this running. Except one wasn't invisible. Ella Mitchell balanced a tray of champagne flutes with easy grace, her dark skin luminous under the chandeliers. She wasn't trying to blend in. She simply was focused entirely on her work with a quiet competence that spoke of someone who took pride in doing things well. An elderly woman struggled with her purse at a nearby table, and Ella set down her tray immediately. "Let me help you with that, ma'am," she said warmly, her Korean accented but clear. The woman looked up, surprised and grateful. "You're very kind. Just doing my job." Ella's smile was sunshine, bright and warm, and asking for nothing in return. She retrieved the woman's dropped handkerchief, made sure she was settled, then lifted her tray again. As she turned, her path intersected with Jinwoo's. Their eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. Ella saw another guest, offered her professional smile, the same one she'd given everyone that evening, and moved past, already focused on the next table that needed service. Jinwoo's world detonated. His feet stopped moving. His hand went toward his jacket in that unconscious gesture of a man who'd learned to reach for weapons when threatened. Because this was a threat more dangerous than any he'd faced in boardrooms or back alleys. That smile had seen him. Not his reputation, not his power, not his money. Just him. And it had asked for absolutely nothing. Taesung's hand moved to his gun, his training screaming danger. His boss never stopped walking, never showed vulnerability, never let anything break his stride. Boss! Taesung's voice was low, urgent. What is it? Jinwoo couldn't answer. Couldn't explain that for the first time in 10 years, someone had looked at him like he was human. Couldn't articulate that a simple smile from a woman whose name he didn't know had cracked something in his chest that he'd thought was permanently sealed. Ella was already across the room, oblivious to the earthquake she'd caused. She helped a waiter who'd dropped a tray of hors d'oeuvres, kneeling in her uniform to pick up broken glass while the young man apologized profusely. Don't worry about it, she said easily. Happens to everyone. Just be careful of your hands. She made a businessman at the bar laugh with some quick comment Jinwoo couldn't hear. When a drunk guest grabbed her wrist, she removed his hand with firm dignity, her smile never wavering but her eyes turning to steel. Sir, I need to ask you to respect the staff, she said clearly. The man backed off, chastened. Jinwoo watched all of it, his meeting with Kim forgotten. Minho stood beside him, following his gaze, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. Boss, Minho said carefully. Kim is waiting. We need to. He stopped when Jinwoo finally looked at him. Minho had seen Jinwoo angry, calculating, dangerous. He'd never seen this. His boss's expression was raw, unguarded, almost vulnerable. Who is she? Jinwoo asked quietly. Minho followed his gaze to Ella. The waitress? Boss, I don't. Find out. It wasn't a request. Minho hesitated, a rare moment of uncertainty crossing his face. In 8 years, he'd never questioned Jinwoo's orders, but this felt different. Dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with rival gangs or police investigations. Boss, the meeting. We'll wait. Jinwoo's eyes never left Ella as she moved through the crowd with practiced efficiency. I want to know everything. Where she works, where she lives, how long she's been in Seoul. He paused, something flickering in his expression. But first, I want to talk to her. Taesung and Minho exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. Jinwoo Park didn't chase women. They chased him, and he politely declined. Always. Jinwoo approached the bar where Ella was restocking champagne flutes, his movements careful, controlled. Up close, he could see the concentration in her dark eyes, the slight furrow of her brow as she counted bottles. She looked up as his shadow fell across her workspace. Good evening, sir. Can I get you something? Her voice was professional, pleasant. She still didn't recognize him as anyone special. Champagne, he said, though he rarely drank at these events. Staying sharp was survival. Ella poured with practiced ease, handing him the flute. Enjoy the evening. She started to turn away, and Jinwoo felt something close to panic. When had he ever panicked? You seem different from the others here. Ella paused, studying him with open curiosity. I'm working. They're not. Makes sense we'd seem different. There was no flirtation in her tone, no calculation. Just simple observation. She returned to her inventory. Jinwoo stood there, champagne untouched, feeling like a teenager who'd forgotten how to speak. Behind him, he could sense Taesung's barely contained shock. The boss was being dismissed. By a waitress. How long have you worked at the Blue Diamond? He tried again. I don't work here regularly, Ellis said, marking something on a clipboard. I'm with the catering company. We staff events like this. She glanced up, and something in her expression softened slightly. Is there something specific you needed, sir? Yes, Jean Woo thought. I need to know why your smile felt like coming home. I need to understand why I can't breathe properly when you look at me. I need to figure out how someone I met 30 seconds ago has already changed everything. No, he said aloud. Thank you. Ella nodded and moved away, called over by her supervisor. Jean Woo watched her go, his untouched champagne growing warm in his hand. Boss. Minho's voice was carefully neutral. We really need to handle Kim. Jean Woo turned, the mask sliding back into place with visible effort. Fine. But after the meeting, I want her serving my table. Boss, I don't think. Make it happen. The meeting with Kim Sang-woo was supposed to take 30 minutes. Jean Woo wrapped it up in 15, his legendary focus scattered. Kim seemed pleased with the quick negotiation, not realizing that Jean Woo had just agreed to terms he would normally have spent hours fighting. Minho said nothing, but his expression spoke volumes. They retired to Jean Woo's private table in a quieter corner of the ballroom. Within 10 minutes, Ella appeared, carrying a fresh bottle of champagne and wearing an expression of professional courtesy edged with wariness. I was told you requested I serve your table this evening, she said, setting down the bottle with perfect form. Is that a problem? Jean Woo asked. That depends on why you requested it. Ella's directness was refreshing and terrifying. She looked at him with clear eyes, no deference, no fear of his power because she didn't know to be afraid. I wanted to apologize if I made you uncomfortable earlier, Jean Woo said, and was rewarded with a flicker of surprise in her eyes. You didn't, Ella said after a moment. You were just persistent. I'm used to it at these events. Rich men who think the staff is part of the entertainment. She poured champagne for Jean Woo and his two associates with smooth efficiency. But you backed off when I made it clear I was working. I appreciate that. Minho coughed into his hand, hiding what might have been a laugh. No one spoke to Jean Woo Park like this. No one. May I ask your name? Jean Woo kept his voice even, aware that his men were watching this interaction like it was a fascinating car crash. Ella hesitated, then apparently decided it was harmless. Ella Michi. Korean is very good, Ella. 2 years of practice and a lot of embarrassing mistakes, she said with a slight smile. The tonal aspects still trip me up sometimes. Are you gentlemen ready to order food? Or just drinks? Just drink for now, Jean Woo said. Where did you learn Korean? Here, mostly. Some online courses before I moved. Ella's tone remained professional, but not unfriendly. Classes at the community center. Korean dramas with subtitles, which is probably why my vocabulary is weird. You moved here 2 years ago. Jean Woo was aware he was conducting an interview, but he couldn't stop himself. Yes, sir. A slight edge entered Ella's voice. Is there a reason for all the questions? Behind Jean Woo, Minho tensed. No one used that tone with the boss. But Jean Woo felt something loosen in his chest. She wasn't intimidated, wasn't performing, was just genuinely wondering why a stranger was interrogating her. Curiosity, Jean Woo admitted. I don't often meet people who move to Seoul without family or business connections. Well, now you have. Ella's smile took any sting from the words. I came for a fresh start, fell in love with the city during a study abroad program in college. When life got complicated back home, I decided why not try something completely different. She glanced around the ballroom. Though I definitely didn't imagine I'd be serving champagne to Korea's elite when I picture my adventure. What did you imagine? Jean Woo leaned forward, genuinely interested. Ella studied him for a long moment, as if trying to decide if he was mocking her. Whatever she saw in his face made her answer honestly. Opening a restaurant eventually. Fusion cuisine, Southern American soul food, meets Korean flavors. I know it sounds ambitious, Jean Woo interrupted. Good ambitious. A real smile broke across Ella's face, transforming her from pretty to breathtaking. Thank you. Most people tell me I'm crazy. She straightened, remembering herself. I should let you gentlemen enjoy your evening. Just signal if you need anything. As she walked away, Minho let out a long breath. Boss, what are you doing? I don't know. Jean Woo admitted quietly. He'd negotiated billion-won deals, orchestrated the downfall of rivals, built an empire in shadows. But sitting here, Watching a waitress navigate the ballroom with grace and purpose, he felt completely out of his depth. Across the room, he noticed movement that made his protective instincts flare. A woman in a designer gown. He recognized her as Park Ji-won, daughter of a rival organization leader, had accidentally bumped into Ella, sending red wine cascading down Ella's uniform. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Ji-won's apology was loud, theatrical, and completely insincere. "How clumsy of me." Ella looked down at her ruined uniform, then up at Ji-won with an expression Jin-woo couldn't quite read. "Accidents happen," she said evenly. "Excuse me while I clean this up." Of course, of course." Ji-won's smile was razor-sharp. "Maybe be more careful where you're walking next time." Jin-woo was on his feet before he'd made a conscious decision to move. The temperature in the immediate vicinity seemed to drop 10 degrees as he approached. Several nearby conversations died mid-sentence. "Mississippi Park," he said quietly. Too quietly. "I believe you owe this woman a genuine apology." Ji-won's face went pale. She knew exactly who Jin-woo was, had probably orchestrated this little scene hoping to gain favor by humiliating someone he'd shown interest in. Rookie mistake. "Mr. Park, I didn't realize." "You didn't realize that spilling wine on someone deliberately is both childish and cruel?" Jin-woo's voice remained soft, but everyone within earshot had stopped moving. "Or you didn't realize I was watching?" "Please," Ella interjected, her hand touching Jin-woo's arm lightly. The contact sent electricity through him. "It's fine. Really. Just wine. I have a change of clothes in my locker." Jin-woo looked down at her, saw something in her eyes that wasn't fear of the situation, but concern. For him. She was trying to de-escalate, not for her own sake, but because she sensed his barely controlled fury and didn't want him to do something he'd regret. The concern in Ella's eyes did what nothing else could have. It pulled Jin-woo back from the edge. He took a breath, then looked at Tae-sung and gave the slightest nod. His bodyguard moved forward smoothly, positioning himself beside Ji-won. "Mississippi Park, I think it's time for you to leave," Tae-sung said quietly. It wasn't a suggestion. Ji-won's face flushed with humiliation, but she knew better than to argue. She gathered her purse and left quickly, her exit watched by dozens of curious eyes. The whispers would start immediately. Jin-woo Park had thrown out a rival's daughter over a waitress. The implications would ripple through Seoul's underworld by morning. Ella was still touching his arm, and Jin-woo became acutely aware of the warmth of her hand through his expensive suit. She withdrew it quickly, stepping back. "That wasn't necessary," she said, her voice low enough that only he could hear. "I've dealt with worse than spilled wine." "It was deliberate," Jin-woo said flatly. "I know." Ella's eyes met his, clear and direct. "But having someone thrown out of charity gala? That's going to cause talk. About you, about me. I don't need anyone fighting my battles, mister." She paused, realizing she didn't know his name. "Park Jin-woo." Recognition flickered across her face. She might not have known him by sight, but she'd clearly heard the name. In Seoul's service industry, you learned quickly which names meant power. "Oh," she said softly. "I see. Do you?" Jin-woo asked, genuinely curious what conclusion she was drawing. "I see that you're someone important enough to have people deliberately try to humiliate me to get your attention," Ella said carefully. "Someone powerful enough that your bodyguards can remove guests without question. Someone I probably shouldn't be having this conversation with." Despite her words, she didn't move away. "But you're still standing here," Jin-woo observed. A small smile tugged at Ella's lips. "I'm still standing here," she agreed. "Probably not my smartest decision tonight, but there it is." She glanced down at her wine-stained uniform. "I really do need a change. And you should get back to your business associates?" "Friends." "Associates," Jin-woo confirmed. He didn't have friends. Hadn't in years. Something in his tone made Ella pause. She looked at him more carefully, and Jin-woo felt exposed under that gaze, like she could see past the expensive suit and dangerous reputation to the lonely man underneath. "Well, Mr. Park," she said finally, "thank you for the intervention, even if it wasn't necessary. Enjoy the rest of your evening." She walked away with her head high, wine-soaked but dignified. Jin-woo watched until she disappeared through a service door, then returned to his table where Min-ho and Tae-sung sat in stunned silence. "You just made an enemy of the Park family over a waitress," Min-ho said carefully. "The Parks have been enemies for years. This changes nothing." Jin-woo's voice was flat, final. "Find out everything about her, but quietly. I don't want her frightened or feeling surveilled." "Boss," Min-ho began. "Everything," Jin-woo repeated. "By tomorrow morning." The rest of the gala passed in a blur. Jin-woo made the required appearances, had the necessary conversations, but his mind was elsewhere. Ella returned in a fresh uniform 20 minutes later, back to work as if nothing had happened. She didn't look his way again, but Jin-woo couldn't stop watching her. The way she moved through the crowd, the genuine warmth in her interactions, the quiet competence in everything she did. She was real in a room full of artificial people, authentic in a world built on deception. At midnight, as promised, Jin-woo left. But he took one last look across the ballroom and found Ella helping an elderly man to his car, her hand gentle on his elbow, her smile bright even after hours on her feet. That night, Jin-woo stood in his penthouse overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline and couldn't sleep. He'd built this empire on ruthlessness and strategy. He understood power, money, fear, but a smile from a woman who saw him as just another guest? That was uncharted territory. His phone buzzed at 6 a.m. Min-ho's report. Aya Michi, 28 years old, from Atlanta, Georgia, moved to Seoul 2 years ago after a bad breakup and family tragedy, her mother's death. Worked 2 jobs, the catering company and a coffee shop in Itaewon. Studied business administration part-time at Seoul National University's extension program. Sent money home monthly to her younger brother who was finishing college. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Friends described her as determined, kind, private. Her dream was still the restaurant. She'd been saving for 3 years. Jin-woo read the report twice, memorizing details. She was exactly who she appeared to be. In his world, that was revolutionary. By 7 a.m., he'd made a decision that would have shocked anyone who knew him. He was going to see her again. Not at a gala where he had home field advantage, but in her world. On her terms. The coffee shop where Ella worked was nothing like the places Jin-woo usually frequented. Small, cozy, tucked into a side street in Itaewon where expats and locals mixed freely. He arrived at 3 p.m., her afternoon shift according to Min-ho's report, and paused outside. This was insane. He was Jin-woo Park. He didn't chase women to coffee shops. He didn't pursue anyone. And yet his hand was pushing open the door, a bell chiming his arrival. Ella looked up from the espresso machine, and her eyes widened in genuine surprise. "Mr. Park, Jin-woo is fine," he said, feeling absurdly out of place in his tailored suit among students with laptops and artists with sketchbooks. "This is quite a coincidence," Ella said carefully, but her tone suggested she didn't believe in coincidences. Jin-woo had built an empire on deception, but standing in this small coffee shop, facing this woman's direct gaze, he found he couldn't lie. "It's not. I asked where you worked." Ella set down the portafilter with a quiet click. "That's concerning, not romantic." The bluntness of it hit him like cold water. In his world, people hid their reactions, calculated their responses. Ella just said what she thought. "You're right," Jin-woo said, surprising himself. "I apologize. That was inappropriate." Ella studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. The coffee shop was quiet. Only 2 other customers, both absorbed in their laptops. "What do you want, Mr. Park?" "Jin-woo," he corrected again. "And honestly, I want to talk to you. Without the gala, without the performance. Just talk." "Why?" The question was simple, but her eyes were complex, searching his face for ulterior motives. "Because you smiled at me like I was human," Jin-woo said quietly. "Do you know how rare that is?" Something shifted in Ella's expression. Not sympathy exactly, but understanding. "That sounds lonely." "It is." The admission cost him, but her eyes softened slightly. "I'm working," Ella said, but there was less edge in her voice. "I can't just chat with customers. especially customers who had me investigated. I know. I am sorry. Jinwoo moved toward the door, then paused. May I come back? Maybe when you're not working? Ella crossed her arms, considering. You're serious about this? About whatever this is? I don't know what this is, Jinwoo admitted. But yes, I'm serious. I get off at 6, Ella said finally. If you're still here then, we can talk. For 20 minutes. That's it. Jinwoo glanced at his watch. 3 hours. He had meetings, calls, 100 things that demanded his attention. I'll be here. Ella shook her head, a smile tugging at her lips despite herself. You're either very persistent or very crazy. Probably both, Jinwoo said, and was rewarded with a small laugh. He ordered coffee, black, like he always drank it, and settled at a corner table with his laptop. Minho called twice, increasingly frantic about canceled meetings. Jinwoo ignored him. Taesung waited in the car outside, probably wondering if his boss had lost his mind. Maybe he had. But for 3 hours, Jinwoo sat in a small coffee shop in Itaewon and felt something he hadn't felt in a decade. Hope. At 6 sharp, Ella emerged from the back room in jeans and a sweater, her work apron left behind. She looked younger without the uniform, more vulnerable. She slid into the seat across from him with a wariness that hadn't been there at the gala. 20 minutes, she reminded him. 20 minutes, Jinwoo agreed. Ask me anything. That surprised her. Anything. You deserve to know who's tracking you down. So ask. Ella leaned back, studying him. Okay, who are you really? And don't give me the business card version. Jinwoo had prepared for many questions. Direct ones, suspicious ones, even angry ones. But this invitation to strip away the carefully constructed layers and reveal himself, this he hadn't expected. He looked at Ella's open, honest face and made a choice that terrified him. I run a family organization, he began carefully. We have interests in real estate, entertainment, shipping. On paper, everything is legitimate. In reality, he paused, gauging her reaction. In reality, my world exists in the spaces between legal and illegal. I inherited this position when my father was murdered 8 years ago. I was 26 and suddenly responsible for hundreds of people whose livelihoods depended on my decisions. Ella's expression didn't change, but he saw her hands tighten slightly on her coffee cup. You're telling me you're a criminal. I'm telling you I'm complicated, Jinwoo said quietly. I didn't choose this life, but I've made choices within it. Some I'm proud of, many I'm not. Why are you telling me this? Ella's voice was steady, but Jinwoo could hear the underlying tension. Most men trying to impress a woman lead with their best qualities, not their worst. Because you asked who I really am, and because if I pursue you, you deserve to know what you'd be getting involved with. Jinwoo met her eyes directly. I could lie, make myself sound better, but you'd find out eventually, and then you'd never trust me again. Ella was quiet for a long moment, processing. A barista wiped down nearby tables. The espresso machine hissed. Normal life, continuing around them, while Jinwoo's heart hammered in his chest, waiting for her judgment. I should walk away right now, Ella said finally. Everything in my head is screaming that this is dangerous, that you're dangerous, that I came to Seoul for a fresh start, not to get tangled up with, she gestured vaguely. Whatever this is. You should, Jinwoo agreed, ignoring the sharp pain in his chest. You absolutely should. But, Ella prompted because there was clearly a but hanging in the air. But I haven't felt this alive in 8 years, Jinwoo said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. I walked past 50 women at that gala who would have given anything for my attention. Beautiful, accomplished, connected women. And I felt nothing. Then you smiled at me. Not because you wanted something, not because you knew who I was, just because that's who you are, and everything changed. Ella shook her head slowly, but Jinwoo could see something warring in her eyes. Fear and curiosity, caution and interest. You don't even know me. I know you help elderly ladies with their purses. I know you stand up to drunk men with dignity. I know you work 2 jobs to send money to your brother while saving for a dream. Jinwoo leaned forward. I know you moved halfway across the world alone because you wanted something different. That takes courage I respect. You had me investigated, Ella pointed out, but there was less accusation in her tone than before. I did. Standard procedure in my world. Everyone gets vetted. But I can stop. I will stop, if that's what you want. Jin Woo spread his hands. I know this is unconventional. Probably inappropriate. Definitely moving too fast. But I don't know how to do this slowly. I've spent 8 years building walls, and you walk through them without even trying. Ella looked down at her coffee, and Jin Woo held his breath. When she looked up again, there was something softer in her expression, though the caution remained. I came to Korea to escape drama, she said quietly. Bad relationship, family trauma, feeling stuck in a life that wasn't mine. I wanted simple. I wanted to build something that was just mine with my own 2 hands. She paused. You are the opposite of simple, Jin Woo. The sound of his name on her lips did something to him. I am, he acknowledged. And yet, Ella trailed off, seeming to wrestle with herself. There's something about you. When you're not being the powerful businessman, when you're just sitting here looking lost and honest, I see someone who's as lonely as I was. AM. Someone who's wearing a mask, so often they've forgotten what their real face looks like. Jin Woo felt exposed, seen in a way that should have been uncomfortable, but instead felt like relief. Is that a yes to seeing me again? It's a maybe, Ella said firmly. A very cautious maybe. One dinner. Somewhere normal. Not some 5-star restaurant where you have private tables and bodyguard hovering. A regular place where regular people eat. And you have to promise me something. Anything. Complete honesty. If I ask you something, you tell me the truth. I don't care how ugly it is. I grew up with liars, dated liars, watched lies destroy my family. I won't do it again. Ella's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. Can you promise me that? Jin Woo thought about his world, built on secrets and strategic deception. Thought about the things he'd done, the choices he'd made, the darkness that lived in the spaces between his words. Could he promise complete honesty to this woman who looked at him with clear eyes and expected the truth? Yes, he said, and meant it. I promise. Ella studied him for another long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, one dinner. This Saturday, if you're free. There's a Korean barbecue place in Hongdae I like. Small, loud, nothing fancy. 7 o'clock. I'll be there. Jin Woo felt something uncomfortably close to joy spreading through his chest. And Jin Woo. Ella stood, gathering her things. Lose the bodyguards for the night. If we're going to do this, I need to see you, not your security detail. That would require careful planning. He was never truly alone, but Jin Woo nodded. I'll make it work. Ella smiled then, the same genuine smile from the gala, and Jin Woo felt it like a physical touch. See you Saturday. She left, and Jin Woo sat in the empty coffee shop feeling like he'd just negotiated the most important deal of his life. His phone buzzed insistently. Minho had called 17 times. Jin Woo ignored it, allowing himself 5 more minutes to sit in this feeling of possibility. The next 3 days were a study in controlled chaos. Jin Woo threw himself into work with renewed focus, clearing his schedule for Saturday evening. Minho watched his boss with growing concern and used to seeing Jin Woo distracted, almost happy. Boss, the family elders want a meeting, Minho said Thursday morning, his expression troubled. About the incident at the gala. Jin Woo looked up from the contracts he was reviewing. What about it? Word has spread. About you humiliating Park Ji-won over a waitress. The Parks are demanding an apology. Minho hesitated. The elders want to discuss your judgment. My judgment is fine. Jin Woo's voice was cold. Tell them I'll meet next week. They want to meet before you see her again. Minho held up a hand before Jin Woo could respond. I'm not spying on you, boss. Everyone knows. You sat in a coffee shop for 3 hours. In Itaewon, you've never done anything like that. Jin Woo leaned back in his chair. And that concerns them. Why? Because she's a liability. Minho's voice was gentle, almost apologetic. American, no connections, no family in Korea. She can't help the organization. She could hurt it, become a target for rivals, a weakness to exploit. Or, Jin Woo said quietly, she could be exactly what I need to remember why any of this matters. Minho looked at his boss, really looked, and saw something he'd never seen before. vulnerability, hope. It scared him more than any rival gang ever had. Boss, I'm saying this as someone who's been with you since the beginning. Be careful, not of her, of what wanting her could cost you. You've built everything on being untouchable. The moment you care about someone, you're not untouchable anymore. I know. Jin Woo returned to his contracts. Tell the elders I'll meet them Monday. After my dinner Saturday. Minho left, shaking his head. Jin Woo continued working, but part of his mind was already Saturday evening, imagining sitting across from Ella in a loud barbecue restaurant. No masks, no performance. Just two people trying to figure out if this impossible thing between them could be real. Saturday arrived wrapped in autumn sunshine. Jin Woo spent the morning in meetings, the afternoon reviewing security reports, and the evening getting ready with more care than he'd taken in years. He chose casual clothes, dark jeans, a simple black shirt, leather jacket. Looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. He looked younger somehow, less burdened. Taesung drove into Hongdae, but stayed in the car at Jin Woo's insistence. I'll be fine for 2 hours. Boss, this isn't safe. At least let me stay in the car, Taesung. That's an order. The restaurant Ella had chosen was everything she promised. Small, packed with university students and young couples, the air thick with the smell of grilling meat and garlic. Jin Woo spotted her immediately at a corner table, wearing a simple green dress that brought out the warmth in her skin. She waved when she saw him, and several nearby diners turned to look at the well-dressed man navigating through the crowded space. You came, Ella said as he sat down, and Jin Woo heard genuine surprise in her voice. Did you think I wouldn't? Honestly, part of me wondered if you'd realize this was crazy and ghost me. Ella smiled, signaling the server. Rich, powerful men don't usually follow through on dinner dates with waitresses at hole-in-the-wall restaurants. I'm not most men. Jin Woo looked around, taking in the cramped quarters, the noise, the complete lack of privacy. In his world, this would be a security nightmare. Here now it felt like freedom. They ordered, Ella clearly familiar with the menu, Jin Woo deferring to her choices. As the server left, an awkward silence fell between them, the weight of everything unspoken suddenly heavy. So, Ella began, then laughed nervously. I've never done this before. Dated someone who had me investigated. What's the protocol? I don't know either, Jin Woo admitted. I haven't dated anyone in 8 years. Ella's eyebrows rose. 8 years? That's pathetic, Jin Woo supplied. I was going to say lonely. Ella leaned forward, her eyes searching his face. Why 8 years? Jin Woo had promised honesty. When I took over the organization, I was engaged. Her name was Sun Hee. We'd been together since university, before everything changed. I thought she understood what my life would become. He paused, old pain flickering across his features. 6 months after my father's murder, she left. Said she couldn't watch me become someone she didn't recognize. Said I was choosing power over her. Were you? Ella asked softly. Yes. The admission was quiet but honest. I was drowning, trying to hold together an empire I didn't want, surrounded by people who'd kill me if I showed weakness. I made choices, hard choices, dark choices. She was right to leave. Jin Woo met Ella's eyes. After that, I decided it was easier to be alone, safer, for everyone. And yet here you are, Ella observed, breaking your own rules. You made me want to break them. Jin Woo reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. Your turn. You said you came to Korea after a bad breakup and family tragedy. Do you want to talk about it? Ella was quiet as the server brought their food, the sizzle of meat on the grill filling the silence. When they were alone again, she began to speak, her voice steady but carrying old grief. My mom died 3 years ago. Cancer. It was fast, 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. I was her primary caretaker while working full-time, watching the strongest woman I knew fade away piece by piece. Ella's hands moved automatically, arranging the meat on the grill. My boyfriend at the time, Marcus, he couldn't handle it. Said I was too consumed with death, too unavailable. He left 3 weeks before she died. I'm sorry, Jin Woo said, meaning it deeply. The worst part was he was right. I was consumed with it. But she was my mother. Ella blinked rapidly, fighting tears. After she died, I looked around at my life. Dead-end job, failed relationship, apartment full of memories I couldn't escape. My mom used to tell me about the year she spent in Seoul in the 70s teaching English. She'd say it was the freest she'd ever felt. So I thought, why not? Life's too short to stay stuck. That's incredibly brave, Jean Woo said quietly. Or incredibly stupid. Ella managed a small smile. Some days I still can't decide which. Moving to a country where I didn't speak the language, didn't know anyone, had no real plan beyond start over. She flipped the meat expertly. But I don't regret it. Even hard parts. Korea gave me space to figure out who I am without my mom, without Marcus, without everyone else's expectations. They ate in companionable silence for a while, the initial awkwardness melting into something more comfortable. Jean Woo watched Ella explain the proper way to wrap the meat in lettuce, her hands moving with confident grace, her earlier sadness giving way to enthusiasm. So your restaurant dream, Jean Woo said. Tell me about it. Really tell me, not the elevator pitch. Ella's face lit up. Okay, so I grew up eating my grandmother's cooking, Southern soul food, heavy and rich and full of love. Mac and cheese, collard greens, fried chicken that would make you weep. When I came to Korea, I fell in love with the flavors here. The fermentation, the balance of sweet and spicy, the way every meal feels like a celebration. She gestured animatedly. I started experimenting, thinking what if I combined them? Korean fried chicken with a buttermilk brine my grandmother taught me. Kimchi mac and cheese. Gochujang glazed short ribs with collard green kimchi. Jean Woo found himself smiling at her passion. That sounds incredible, right? But everyone I pitch it to says it's too niche, too risky, that fusion restaurants are oversaturated. Ella's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm chasing a fantasy. Maybe they're wrong, Jean Woo countered. Maybe they lack imagination. He leaned forward. I've built my career on seeing potential where others see risk. If you believe in this, truly believe, then it's worth pursuing. Easy to say when you have the capital to absorb failure, Ella pointed out, but there was no bitterness in her tone. True, but I've also seen plenty of well-funded ventures fail because the people behind them didn't have passion. You have passion. That's worth more than people realize. Jean Woo paused. How much do you need? To start. Ella's eyes narrowed. Don't what? Don't offer to fund it. That's not why I told you. That's not why I'm here. Her voice was firm. If I build this, I build it myself. With my own money, my own work. Otherwise, it's not really mine. Jean Woo felt something warm bloom in his chest. In his world, everyone wanted something, money, connections, favors. Ella wanted nothing but to be heard. I respect that. But if you ever need advice, connections to property owners, help navigating Korean business regulations. Maybe, Ella interrupted with a small smile. Let's see if we make it past the first date before we start planning my business empire. Fair. Jean Woo raised his glass. To first dates and uncertain futures. Ella clinked her glass against his. And to honesty, even when it's hard. They talked for 2 more hours, the restaurant emptying around them until they were among the last customers. Conversation flowed easily. Childhood stories, favorite books, embarrassing moments, dreams deferred and dreams still burning bright. Jean Woo told her about learning piano as a child before his father deemed it too soft for a future leader. Ella shared her disastrous first attempts at making kimchi that resulted in an explosion in her tiny apartment. The smell lasted for weeks, she laughed. My roommate threatened to move out. You have a roommate? Jean Woo asked. Sarah, American teacher. We met at an expat meetup my first month here. Ella glanced at her phone. Who was probably wondering where I am. I told her I'd be home by 10. Jean Woo checked his watch. It was nearly 11. I'm sorry, I lost track of time. So did I. Ella stood, gathering her jacket. Which is actually a good sign, I think. They walked out into the cool autumn evening, Hongdae streets still alive with young people and music spilling from bars. Taesung's car was parked discreetly down the street, but Jean Woo ignored it, focusing entirely on the woman beside him. "So," Ella said as they paused at the subway entrance. "Verdict on the first date? I want a second one," Jin Woo said without hesitation. "And a third, and however many you'll give me." Ella smiled, that genuine smile that had started everything. "You're very direct when you're not being mysterious and powerful. Is that a yes?" "It's a yes to a second date," Ella said carefully. "But Jin Woo, I need you to understand something. I like you. I really do. But this us, it scares me. Your world, your life, the danger you hinted at. I need to know what I'm getting into before I go any deeper." Jin Woo had promised honesty. "My world is dangerous. People in my organization have enemies. I have enemies. Anyone close to me becomes a potential target." He took a breath. "If we continue this, I'll do everything in my power to protect you. But I can't guarantee you won't get hurt. And that terrifies me more than anything I've faced." Ella looked at him for a long moment, and Jin Woo could see her weighing his words, calculating risks, making decisions that would shape both their futures. "I don't need guarantees," she said finally. "Life doesn't give those. My mom died when she was 53. Marcus left when I needed him most. I moved to a foreign country on a hope and a prayer. I've learned that playing it safe doesn't actually keep you safe." She reached out, touching his hand briefly. "But I need you to keep being honest with me. The moment you start hiding things to protect me, we're done. I'm a grown woman. I can make my own choices about what risks are worth taking." Jin Woo turned his hand over, capturing hers. "I promise." The next 2 weeks unfolded like a dream Jin Woo didn't want to wake from. They saw each other 5 times. Coffee between Ella's shifts, a walk along the Han River, a movie in a crowded theater where Jin Woo sat in the back row for the first time in his adult life. Another dinner at a different hole-in-the-wall restaurant Ella loved. Each meeting stripped away another layer of the armor Jin Woo had spent years building. But reality was waiting. On a gray Monday morning, Jin Woo sat across from the Council of Family Elders in a private room at one of his legitimate hotels. 7 men, all over 60, all who'd served his father and now barely tolerated his leadership. The air was thick with disapproval and expensive cologne. "This has gone on long enough," said Elder Choi, the most vocal of his critics. "The Park family is demanding satisfaction for the humiliation you caused their daughter. You embarrassed them publicly over Waitress. I removed someone who deliberately harmed another person," Jin Woo said evenly. "That's not humiliation. That's consequence." "It's poor judgment," Elder Kim interjected. "And this continues. You're seen with this woman regularly. At common restaurants, public places. You're making yourself vulnerable." "I'm living my life," Jin Woo replied. "You're the head of this organization." Elder Choi slammed his hand on the table. "You don't have the luxury of a life separate from your responsibilities. This woman, this foreigner with no connections, no family. What purpose does she serve? How does she strengthen our position?" Jin Woo felt his temper flare, but kept his voice controlled. "Not everything is about position and strategy." "Everything is about position and strategy," Elder Choi shot back. "Your father understood that. He married your mother because her family controlled shipping routes we needed. Every decision he made served the organization first. You're letting sentiment cloud your judgment." "My father also died alone and bitter at 58, Jin Woo said quietly. "Maybe his approach wasn't as successful as you remember." The room went silent. Speaking ill of his father was taboo, but Jin Woo was tired of the mythology. His father had been brilliant and ruthless and profoundly unhappy. Jin Woo had promised himself he wouldn't follow that same path. Elder Kim, usually more moderate, spoke carefully. "Jin Woo, we're not saying you can't have companionship, but this woman is a security risk. She could be used against you. She could be followed, kidnapped, hurt. Have you considered what happens when your enemies discover you care about her?" "Every day," Jin Woo admitted. "I've had security watching her apartment, her workplaces. Discreetly. She doesn't know. And when she finds out," Minho asked from his position by the door. "Because she will find out. Women like her, they notice things." Jin Woo didn't have an answer for that. Elder Choi seized on the silence. "End this now. Clean break. We'll arrange introductions to suitable women. The Young family has a daughter, educated in Switzerland, understands our world. No, Jean Wu stood. I'm not ending anything. I'll continue to lead this organization as I see fit, and I'll see who I want to see. If that's a problem, feel free to call a vote of no confidence. It was a gamble. The elders could remove him, theoretically. But Jean Wu controlled too many key operations, had too much loyalty from the younger members. They needed him more than he needed them, and they all knew it. You're making a mistake, Elder Choi said coldly. Then it's my mistake to make, Jean Wu replied and walked out. He was halfway to his car when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, containing a single photo. His blood turned to ice. It was Ella, leaving the coffee shop, completely unaware of the camera capturing her image. The message that followed was brief. Pretty girlfriend. Be ashamed if something happened to her. Jean Wu was in his car immediately, speed dialing Tae-sung. Where is she? Home. She just got back from her morning shift. Tae-sung's voice was tense. Boss, what's wrong? Send 2 more men to her building. Now, and find out who sent this photo. Jean Wu forwarded the message. I want a name by tonight. You should have expected this. Should have known that showing interest in someone would paint a target on her back. His enemies had been waiting for exactly this kind of weakness. Jean Wu drove to Ella's neighborhood, parking down the street where he could see her building. She was up there, probably studying or cooking or blissfully unaware that her connection to him had made her a pawn in a game she didn't even know existed. His phone rang. Minho, it's the Kong organization, Minho said without preamble. They've been testing boundaries for months. This is their way of sending a message. They know about her, and they're willing to use her to get to you. Double security on all our operations, Jean Wu ordered. And I want to know every movement the Kangs make. Every phone call, every meeting. I want to know what they're planning before they plan it. Boss, there's another option. Minho's voice was careful. You could step back from her. Make it clear she means nothing. Take away their leverage. Jean Wu closed his eyes, imagining Ella's face when he told her it was over. Imagining going back to his empty penthouse, his hollow existence, his carefully controlled world where nothing touched him because he touched nothing. No, he said. Find another way. That evening, Jean Wu showed up at Ella's apartment unannounced. She answered the door in sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, textbooks spread across her small table. Jean Wu, I thought we were meeting tomorrow. Her smile faded when she saw his expression. What's wrong? He shouldn't be here. Should have waited until he had a plan, until he could control the narrative. But the thought of her in danger because of him was unbearable. Can I come in? Ella stepped aside, concern evident in her eyes. Her apartment was tiny, studio layout, second-hand furniture, walls covered in photos and post-it notes with Korean vocabulary words. It was warm and lived in and completely foreign to Jean Wu's sterile penthouse. You're scaring me, Ella said, closing the door. What happened? Jean Wu pulled out his phone, showed her the photo. Someone sent me this today. A rival organization. They're threatening you to get to me. Ella stared at the image of herself, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding to anger. I'm being followed. By them, yes. And by my people, trying to protect you. Jean Wu forced himself to continue. I've had security watching you since the gala. I told myself it was just precautionary, that you didn't need to know. But you've been spying on me. Ella's voice was cold. For 2 weeks, you've had people following me, watching me, and you didn't think I should know. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to control the situation. Ella shot back. You promised me honesty, Jean Wu. Complete honesty. But you've been keeping this from me the whole time. I know. I'm sorry. I should have told you. Jean Wu ran a hand through his hair, frustration and fear making him reckless. But this is exactly what I was afraid of. They know about you now. They know you matter to me. And that makes you a target. Ella crossed her arms, and Jean Wu could see her processing, could see the walls going up. So what now? You have guards follow me everywhere. I live in a cage for your peace of mind. I don't know, Jean Wu admitted. I've been trying to figure that out all day. My advisors think I should end this. Make it clear you mean nothing to me. Remove their leverage. Something flickered in Ella's eyes. And what do you think? I think I can't do that. Jean Wu stepped closer. I think I've been half alive for 8 years, and these past 2 weeks with you have reminded me what it feels like to actually live. I think the thought of you getting hurt because of me is terrifying, but the thought of walking away from you is worse. That's not fair, Ella said, her voice breaking slightly. You don't get to say things like that when you've been lying to me. I know, and I'm sorry. Truly. Jean Woo wanted to touch her, to close the distance between them, but he held himself back. I promised you honesty, and I broke that promise. If you want me to leave and never come back, I'll understand. But if you give me another chance, I swear I will tell you everything. No more secrets, no more protection by omission. You deserve to make informed decisions about your own safety. Ella walked to her window, looking out at the Seoul skyline. Jinwoo waited, his heart pounding, knowing that whatever she decided would shape the rest of his life. I need you to tell me everything, she said finally, not turning around. Not the sanitized version, not the keep Ella comfortable version. I need to know exactly what your world looks like, what these people are capable of, what being with you actually means. Okay, Jinwoo said. Ella turned, her eyes bright with unshed tears but her voice steady. And then I need time to think, really think, because this isn't just exciting and dangerous anymore. This is my life you're asking me to risk. I know. They sat at her small table, and for the next 3 hours, Jinwoo told her everything. About his father's murder, shot in their family home by a rival he trusted. About the violence required to maintain control in his world. About the money laundering, the protection rackets, the legitimate businesses that funded less legitimate operations. About past conflicts that had ended in bloodshed. About the tenuous peace that currently existed and how fragile it really was. Ella listened without interruption, her face growing paler, but her gaze never wavering. When he finished, she sat in silence for a long moment. You've killed people, she said finally. It wasn't a question. Not directly. Not with my own hands. But I've ordered things done that resulted in deaths. Yes. Jinwoo wouldn't lie, not now. I'm not proud of it. But in my world, showing weakness gets you killed. Hesitation gets you killed. And you're asking me to step into that world. Ella's voice was barely a whisper. No, I'm asking if you'll let me try to keep you separate from it, while still being part of your life. I know that's probably impossible. I know I'm being selfish, even asking. But Jinwoo stopped, struggling with emotions he'd buried for years. But I'm in love with you, Ella. I think I have been since you smiled at me at that gala. And I know it's too soon, and I know it's crazy, but it's true. Ella's breath caught, her eyes wide with shock. Jinwoo, you can't just. I know it's too soon. I know you probably think I'm confusing loneliness with love, or that this is some kind of obsession. Jinwoo stood, needing to move, to do something with the energy coursing through him. Maybe you're right. Maybe I don't know the difference anymore. But what I feel when I'm with you, it's the only real thing in my life. The only thing that isn't calculated or strategic or part of some larger plan. Ella stood too, wrapping her arms around herself. You're right, it is too soon. We've known each other 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Jinwoo. People don't fall in love in 2 weeks. Don't they? Jinwoo turned to face her. My parents met at a business dinner and were engaged a month later. Minho met his wife at a coffee shop and proposed 3 weeks after their first date. Love doesn't follow a timeline. Those are different. Your parents, that was arranged, strategic. And Minho? Ella paused. Minho is married? Was. She died 5 years ago. Cancer. Jinwoo's voice softened. He took a month off work, first time in his life. Came back different, quieter. But he told me once that he'd rather have had those 3 years with her than a lifetime of safety without her. Ella sat back down heavily. You're not playing fair, using that story. I'm not trying to play at all. I'm trying to be honest. Jinwoo knelt in front of her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. I'm not asking you to say you love me back. I'm not even asking you to stay with me. I'm just telling you the truth of what I feel so you can make your decision with all the information. Ella looked at him for a long moment, tears finally spilling over. I came to Korea to escape complications, to find peace, to build something simple in mine. I know, and you're the most complicated person I've ever met. A wet laugh escaped her. A literal crime boss who sends me flowers at work and has people following me and just told me he loves me after 2 weeks. I know, Jean Woo said again, softer. I should tell you to leave, to never contact me again. Let me go back to my simple life with my simple dreams. Ella wiped her eyes. That would be the smart thing, the safe thing. Yes, it would, but I don't want to. The words came out in a rush. God help me, I don't want to, because when I'm with you, I feel seen in a way I haven't since my mom died. You listen when I talk about my restaurant like it's the most important thing in the world. You remember little things I mention in passing. You look at me like I'm precious, and I haven't felt precious in so long. Jean Woo reached for her hands, and this time she let him take them. You are precious. To me you are. I'm not saying I love you, Ella said firmly, even as she squeezed his hands. I'm not there yet. Maybe I won't ever get there. But I'm not ready to walk away either. Hope bloomed in Jean Woo's chest, bright and terrifying. What are you saying? I'm saying I need time. A week. Maybe 2. To process all of this. To figure out if I can live with the reality of your world, not just the idea of it. Ella pulled her hands back gently. And during that time, I need you to not contact me. No flowers, no texts, no showing up my work. I need space to think clearly, and I can't do that when you're around making me feel things that might be clouding my judgment. Jean Woo nodded, though the thought of not seeing her for 2 weeks felt like torture. Okay, but the security stays. Non-negotiable. You won't see them, but they'll be there. The threat is real, Ella. I know. Ella stood, and Jean Woo rose with her. 2 weeks. Then we meet, and I'll tell you my decision. Where? When? The coffee shop in Itaewon, where we had our first real conversation. 2 weeks from today, 6 p.m. Ella walked to the door, opening it. And Jean Woo, thank you for being honest tonight. Finally, Jean Woo left, and the next 2 weeks were the longest of his life. He threw himself into work, dealing with the Kong situation with cold efficiency that reminded everyone why he'd survived 8 years at the top. The Kangs had overplayed their hand. Threatening Ella had been meant to intimidate, but had only focused Jean Woo's rage into something sharp and strategic. Within a week, the Kangs found their drug shipments mysteriously seized by police, their protection payments to corrupt officials suddenly failing to buy protection, their key lieutenants facing investigation. Jean Woo didn't need violence when he had information and leverage. The message was clear: touch what's mine, and I'll dismantle your empire piece by piece. The Kong boss requested a meeting. Jean Woo made him wait 4 days, then met him in a neutral location with Tae-sung and Min-ho flanking him. We overstepped, Boss Kong said stiffly, a man in his 60s who'd built his organization through brutality. The woman is off limits. You have my word. Your word means nothing, Jean Woo replied coldly. But your fear of what I can do to your operation, that I'll accept. Touch her, threaten her, look at her wrong, and what I've done this week will seem gentle. Understood. Boss Kong nodded, fury and humiliation warring on his face. But he was smart enough to know when he was beaten. Jean Woo left the meeting feeling hollow. He'd protected Ella, but at what cost? He'd unleashed the full force of his power, reminded everyone in Seoul's underworld exactly how ruthless he could be. Was this the man Ella would come back to? The one who dismantled organizations as casually as other men filed paperwork? He stood outside the coffee shop 15 minutes early, watching through the window as Ella served customers, her smile bright and genuine. She hadn't seen him yet. For a moment, Jean Woo let himself imagine what would happen if she said no. He'd survive. He'd survived worse. But he'd never recover. At exactly 6 p.m., Ella's shift ended. She emerged from the back room, saw him through the window, and their eyes met. Jean Woo couldn't read her expression. She gathered her things slowly, said goodbye to her co-workers, then stepped outside. Hi, she said. Hi. Jean Woo's heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. They walked to a nearby park in silence, finding an empty bench overlooking a small pond. The autumn evening was cool, leaves falling around them in shades of red and gold. I talked to my brother, Ella said finally. About you. About everything. Jean Woo hadn't expected that. What did you tell him? The truth. That I met someone who makes me feel alive and terrified in equal measure. That he's dangerous and honest and unlike anyone I've ever known. Ella pulled her jacket tighter. Marcus, my brother, he said something that stuck with me. He said, Ella, you moved to Korea because safe wasn't working for you. Maybe it's time to stop choosing safe. Wise man, Jinwoo managed. He also said if you hurt me, he'll fly to Korea and make you regret it, which is adorable considering he's a high school math teacher who's never been in a fight in his life. Ella smiled slightly, but the sentiment was nice. I would never hurt you intentionally, Jinwoo said. But Ella, I can't promise my world won't hurt you. I can't guarantee your safety completely. All I can promise is that I'll do everything in my power to protect you, and that I'll be honest with you about the risks. I know. I've been thinking about that a lot. Ella turned to face him fully. I also talked to Sarah, my roommate. Told her about the threats, the security, all of it. She thinks I'm insane for even considering this. Jinwoo's chest tightened. And what do you think? I think she's probably right. I think this is crazy and dangerous and could end badly in so many ways. Ella reached for his hand. But I also think that for the first time since my mom died, I feel genuinely excited about the future. Not just my restaurant dreams, but actual life. Coming home and wondering if I'll see you. Getting texts that make me smile. Having someone who wants to know about my day. Who remembers that I hate cucumbers and love thunderstorms and am terrified of pigeons. You're terrified of pigeons? Jinwoo asked, a smile tugging at his lips despite everything. They're unpredictable and aggressive and have dead eyes. Ella laughed, the sound lightening the heavy atmosphere. Don't change the subject. I'm trying to tell you something important. Sorry. Continue. Ella took a breath. I'm saying yes. Yes to trying this, whatever this is. Yes to dating you, knowing full well how complicated it will be. Yes to your security guards and your dangerous world and your too soon feelings that might actually not be too soon at all. Jinwoo felt like he couldn't breathe. You're sure? I'm terrified. But yes, I'm sure. Ella squeezed his hand. But I have conditions. Non-negotiable conditions. Anything. First, complete honesty. Always. If there's danger, you tell me. If something happens in your organization, you tell me. I can handle the truth. I can't handle being kept in the dark for my own good. Agreed. Second, I stay separate from your business. I don't want to meet your associates unless absolutely necessary. I don't want to attend events where I'd be paraded around as your girlfriend to make some kind of statement. My life, my job, my school, my friends stays mine. Agreed, Jinwoo said again. Third, and this is important, you don't try to fix my problems or buy my dreams. I know you have resources. I know you could write a check and make my restaurant happen tomorrow. But if you do that, it stops being my dream and becomes your gift. I need to build it myself. Jinwoo nodded slowly. That one's harder. My instinct is to give you everything you want. I know, but I need you to fight that instinct. Can you do that? I'll try. I promise I'll try. Jinwoo pulled her closer. Any other conditions? Just one more. If this gets too dangerous, if your world starts consuming mine in ways I can't handle, I reserve the right to walk away. And you have to let me go without trying to change my mind. That condition hurt, but Jinwoo understood it. Okay, but the same goes for you. If I become someone you don't recognize, someone whose choices you can't live with, you tell me. You don't suffer in silence, trying to make it work. Ella nodded. Deal. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what they'd just agreed to settling over them. Then Jinwoo cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. I'm going to kiss you now, he said softly. If that's okay. It's very okay, Ella whispered. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, both of them aware they were stepping off a cliff together with no guarantee of a safe landing. When they pulled apart, Ella was smiling, and Jinwoo felt something he hadn't felt in 8 years, genuine happiness. The next 3 months unfolded like a complicated dance. Jinwoo and Ella navigated their relationship carefully, learning each other's rhythms and boundaries. True to his word, Jinwoo kept her separated from his business life. Their dates were at normal restaurants, quiet parks, her favorite bookstore in Itaewon. He showed up at the coffee shop during her breaks, learned to make small talk with her roommate Sarah, even helped her study Korean by reading textbooks aloud in his precise, formal accent that made her laugh. But the danger never fully disappeared. Security remained constant, invisible but present. Twice, potential threats were neutralized before Ella even knew they existed. Jin Woo told her about both incidents, honoring his promise of complete honesty, and watched her process the reality of his world with a strength that awed him. "I'm okay," she said after he told her about a rival gang member who'd been asking questions about her. "I mean, I'm not okay. It's scary, but I knew what I was signing up for." Jin Woo pulled her close. "You can change your mind. Anytime." "I know," Ella said into his chest. "But I haven't yet." Their relationship deepened in small moments. Jin Woo learned that Ella sang off-key in the shower, was hopeless at video games but loved trying anyway, and cried at every sad movie even when she'd seen it before. Ella discovered that Jin Woo was surprisingly funny when he let his guard down, had read extensively on philosophy and history, and played piano beautifully when he thought no one was listening. One evening, 3 months into their relationship, Ella asked to see where he lived. Jin Woo had avoided it, knowing his sterile penthouse would reveal how empty his life had been. But he agreed, and her reaction when she walked in was exactly what he'd feared. "Jin Woo," she said softly, looking around the immaculate, soulless space. "Where do you actually live? This looks like a hotel." "This is where I live," he said defensively. Ella walked through the rooms, perfectly decorated, completely impersonal. No photos, no clutter, no evidence that anyone actually lived there. She stopped in the kitchen, opening his refrigerator to find it nearly empty except for bottled water and takeout containers. "This is the saddest thing I've ever seen," she declared. "We're fixing this." "Fixing what?" "This. All of this." Ella gestured around. "You need art that you actually chose, not whatever designer picked it. You need photos of people you care about. You need food in your fridge that isn't takeout. You need this place to feel like a home, not a mausoleum." Over the next few weeks, Ella slowly infiltrated Jin Woo's space. A photo of them together appeared on his nightstand. She cooked dinner in his kitchen, leaving spices and her grandmother's hot sauce in his empty cabinets. She dragged him to art galleries to pick pieces he actually liked, not just expensive investments. Slowly, the penthouse began to feel lived in. Minho noticed the change immediately. "Boss, is that a throw pillow?" Jin Woo looked at the bright blue pillow Ella had insisted would add life to the space. "Yes, you have a throw pillow," Minho repeated, like he couldn't believe it. "Is that a problem?" Minho grinned, the first genuine smile Jin Woo had seen from him in months. "No, boss. It's actually really good to see." But not everyone was happy. The family elders continued to grumble. Rivals tested boundaries, looking for weaknesses. And Jin Woo struggled constantly with the balance between protecting Ella and respecting her independence. The crisis came 5 months into their relationship. Jin Woo arrived at Ella's apartment late one evening to find her packing a suitcase, her face streaked with tears. "What happened?" He was at her side immediately, scanning for injuries, for threats. "My brother," Ella choked out. "Marcus. He was in a car accident. He's in the hospital, and they don't know if..." She couldn't finish the sentence. Jin Woo's mind immediately went to logistics. "When's the next flight to Atlanta?" "There's nothing until tomorrow afternoon. I already checked." Ella zipped her suitcase with shaking hands. "I can't get there for another 20 hours, and what if..." "Give me 10 minutes, Jin Woo said, pulling out his phone. "Jin Woo, don't..." "Ella." He cupped her face gently. "Let me help. Please. Not because you can't handle it yourself, but because I can make this easier and there's no reason you should suffer when I have resources." Ella looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." Jin Woo made 3 phone calls. Within 30 minutes, he'd arranged for a private jet to take them to Atlanta, contacted the best neurosurgeon in Georgia to consult on Marcus's case, and had a car waiting to take them to the airport. "Us?" Ella asked as they rode to the airfield. "You're coming with me? Did you think I'd let you go through this alone?" Jin Woo kept his arm around her. "I clear my schedule for the week. Minho can handle things here." Ella broke down crying again, but this time from gratitude. Thank you. God, thank you. They landed in Atlanta 9 hours later. Marcus's condition was serious but stable, a traumatic brain injury that would require surgery and extensive rehabilitation. Jinwoo stayed in the background, letting Ella be with her family, but he was there, bringing coffee at 3 a.m. when she couldn't sleep in the hospital waiting room, talking to doctors to understand the medical jargon, holding her when she needed to fall apart. On the third day, when Marcus was out of immediate danger, Ella's father pulled Jinwoo aside. David Mitchell was a tall, weathered man who looked at Jinwoo with the protective suspicion all fathers have for their daughters' boyfriends. Ella told me what you do, David said bluntly. Told me about your world. Jinwoo braced for the rejection, the demand that he stay away from his daughter. Yes, sir. She also told me you flew her here on a private jet, got the best doctors to consult on Marcus's case, and haven't left her side for 3 days. David's expression softened slightly. I don't understand your life. Don't pretend to. And if you hurt my daughter, I don't care how powerful you are. I'll find a way to make you regret it. I would expect nothing less, sir. But, David continued, I've watched you with her. The way you look at her, the way you've taken care of her this week without trying to take over. That's love. Real love. So I'm going to trust my daughter's judgment and give you my blessing. Don't make me regret it. Jinwoo shook his hand, feeling the weight of that trust. I won't, sir. I promise. They stayed in Atlanta for a week until Marcus was stable and awake. Ella's brother, despite being in a hospital bed, still managed to threaten Jinwoo. You're the crime boss, Marcus said weakly. I am. My sister says you're honest, that you protect her, that you make her happy. Marcus fixed Jinwoo with a surprisingly fierce stare for someone on heavy pain medication. Keep doing all three, and we're good. Mess up any of them, and I don't care that I'm a math teacher. I'll find a way to hurt you. Jinwoo smiled despite himself. The Mitchell family was fierce in their love. Deal. On the flight back to Seoul, Ella curled against Jinwoo's side, exhausted but peaceful. Thank you, she said quietly. For all of it. The plane, the doctors being there. I know I said I didn't want you solving my problems, but this was different, Jinwoo interrupted. This was family emergency, not me trying to control your life. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I know, and I love you for it. The words came out naturally, like she'd been holding them in and they'd finally found their way out. Jinwoo's breath caught. What? Ella lifted her head, meeting his eyes. I love you. I've been feeling it for a while now, but I wasn't ready to say it. But this week, watching you care for my family like they're yours, seeing how you put my needs first even when it was inconvenient, I realized I've been in love with you for longer than I admitted. Jinwoo kissed her softly. I love you too. So damn much. They returned to Seoul changed. The crisis had deepened their relationship, proven they could weather storms together. Ella met more of Jinwoo's trusted people. Minho's quiet approval meant more than she'd expected. Taesung started calling her boss lady, which made her laugh. Even some of the younger organization members treated her with genuine respect. But Ella also became more integrated into Jinwoo's efforts to change. He'd been thinking about it for months, the things she'd said about building something good, about legacy. He started shifting operations, pushing out the most violent elements, focusing on legitimate businesses. It was slow, dangerous work. You couldn't just walk away from the underworld, but Ella's influence was undeniable. You're making me want to be better, Jinwoo told her one evening as they cooked dinner together in his now-lived-in penthouse. You were already good, Ella corrected, stirring pasta sauce. You were just buried under years of survival mode. I'm just reminding you who you are. A year after they'd met, Jinwoo took Ella back to the Blue Diamond Hotel for a charity gala. She wore a green dress that took his breath away, her natural hair styled in elegant curls. This is where it started, she said, looking around the familiar ballroom. Where you smiled at me, Jinwoo agreed, pulling her close. Best smile of my life. They danced, and Jinwoo was aware of the stares, the whispers. Let them talk. Let them wonder about the crime boss who'd fallen for a waitress. Let them see that he'd chosen love over strategy, connection over control. As the evening ended, they stood in the same spot where Jinwoo had first frozen, watching Ella across the room. This time, she was in his arms, and he had no intention of ever letting go. "What are you thinking?" Ella asked, seeing the contemplative look on his face. "I'm thinking about that night. How I walked past 50 women without feeling anything. How your smile stopped my entire world." Jin-woo brushed a curl from her face. "How I thought I was dead inside until you reminded me how to live." "Pretty dramatic," Ella teased, but her eyes were soft. "Maybe, but it's true." Jin-woo kissed her forehead. "You saved me, Ella Mitchell, from a life of isolation and emptiness. You saved me." "We saved each other," Ella corrected. "I was lost too, remember? Running from grief, hiding in a foreign country, too scared to really connect with anyone. You gave me a reason to be brave." They left the gala together, stepping into the Seoul night. Jin-woo's world was still complicated, still dangerous, but it was no longer empty. He had Ella, had love, had hope for a future that looked different from the path his father had walked. And that made all the difference. Lessons from this story. True connection requires vulnerability. Jin-woo spent 8 years building walls to protect himself, only to discover that real strength comes from allowing yourself to be seen. Flaws, fears, and all. Ella's genuine smile broke through his defenses because it asked for nothing and offered authentic human connection. Honesty is the foundation of trust. Despite the dangers of his world, Jin-woo's commitment to complete honesty with Ella, even when it would have been easier to hide the truth, became the bedrock of their relationship. Without that honesty, their love couldn't have survived. Love isn't about possession or control. Jin-woo learned that truly loving Ella meant respecting her independence, her dreams, and her right to make her own choices, even when every instinct screamed to protect her by controlling her environment. Everyone deserves to be seen for who they truly are. Ella saw past Jin-woo's power and reputation to the lonely man underneath. That recognition, being valued for his authentic self rather than his position, transformed him. Courage comes in many forms. Ella's decision to risk a relationship with Jin-woo, despite the obvious danger, showed that bravery isn't just about facing physical threats. It's about opening your heart when you could be hurt. Real change takes time and sacrifice. Jin-woo's journey from isolated crime boss to someone capable of genuine love and working toward a better life didn't happen overnight. It required consistent choices to prioritize connection over control. Thank you for joining us on Jin-woo and Ella's journey. This story reminds us that love can find us in the most unexpected moments, with the most unlikely people. Sometimes, it takes just one genuine smile, one moment of authentic connection, to change the entire trajectory of a life. We hope their story inspired you to remain open to possibility, to choose courage over comfort, and to believe that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Remember, your own love story might be just one smile away. Until next time, keep believing in the power of authentic connection.